Chilly here with Sirius Talis Moon, and we are finalizing Mercury Hour. With Mercury 22 in, this is a time to begin to post the series and go to the third in the series of Alcyone, a fixed star, and the 0 degree point of Gemini. This picture of me is so horrible. Um, um, this is... Now, I was talking about rituals and the benevolent rituals that benevolent rituals can go bad, um, and so on and so forth. And as we speak, there is actually an issue around something that I kind of feel has good energy, and it's too early to say. But this is also where a conflict around ritual and many questions regarding that came about. Um, and all together with something that um, was definitely previously hijacked by MK Often or MK Ultra or something of that sort. So it's very interesting, and I was looking for the ending of the chapter about the dragon story and seeing the rainbow people aboriginal, but also rainbow as the rainbow that people access an alternative world through torture, and the MK Ultra projects, um, and the question and the need to discern when it comes to ritual, but also the awareness that people can tap into a certain egregore, um, unintending to, or not aware, or not really knowing to the extent of what something entails, and at the same time they can shift that egregore, or they can create changes. So there is just um, a lot. Now this is definitely turning into a three-part series on a fixed star, which, for those who were thinking I would go away from astrology, including me, that I was thinking, oh, maybe I will do some, you know, take a break for a while and then boom, treaty. This is exactly Uranus, and I haven't joined Sedna fully, and I haven't joined Uranus fully into the mix. But this is exactly the Uranus type of... Now here's the thing. Gemini in itself is quite undecisive, or it is absolutely the sign that can decide one thing and do another, not because it's inauthentic, but because it's a mutable air sign, in all that entails. Okay, it's a mutable air sign, so um, so many things can change, and I don't know what to put here. I don't have the fixed star. I will just put the Arctic and that's it. um, Now, this can definitely air tomorrow. Let's give it this hour. Or am I in tomorrow? Am I in tomorrow? No, I'm in tomorrow, but today is tomorrow. So much Gemini in one introduction. Um, Now, let's try to find that dragon story end. Um, so the Aboriginal were associating this area with the with rainbow serpents that were sacred to them. Um, and this is the I think that this is the next chapter. Oh, this is basically the Aboriginal story. One story tells how one night the moon and the evening star passed very close to each other. The evening star became very hot and fell to the earth, causing a brilliant, deafening explosion. This greatly frightened the Jaru, and it was a long time before they ventured near the site, only to discover it was the spot where the evening star had fallen. Goldsmith reports that the Aboriginal elder told him the story came from his grandfather's grandfather, so indicating it was handed down in its present form before the scientific identification of the crater. So the oral stories and the physical evidence. Um, Also, when we talk about scriptures or oral traditions, the pre-verbal meets the verbal, or the pre-written meets the written. Um, a star being fall down. It was a small star, not so big. It fell straight down and it hit the ground. It fell straight down and made that hole round a very deep hole. The earth shook when the star fell down. Now, the formation of craters, asteroids falling. I don't know if you'll see astrological stuff like that. With Sedna, we might, because Sedna it's a once in 12 millennia, and again, we might, and we might not. So, and you talk about the Wolf Creek crater. The star is a rainbow serpent. This is the Aboriginal way. We call the snake Warnayara. The snake travels like stars travel in the sky. It came down at Kandimalal, Wolf Creek. I've been there. So we have rainbow colored flying serpents. Basically the unpunished serpent. Um, Now, here's the thing. Because every tradition has a context, there are many things that can vary around that context. For example, Dr. Angela Puka refers to Mercury, and she says in some tradition it was used medicinally, whereas in some traditions it was used in other contexts, and that would change the quality of Mercury in that tradition or in that esoteric tradition. Like, do we use esoteric, I don't know, to have love spells, or do we use that to have medicine spells? Um, and this can be, for example, one of the things that I'm denoting at is the fact that because we have 9 millennia era of misuse of children also occultistically, then we also have 9 millennia where the the entire occultistic tradition, with all the traditions feeding and fed by it, had no woman that was not raped. And this it's kind of like a meteor falling or a bomb dropping, but it's kind of like, hey, we don't know the world without rape. There's so many things about the world we don't know. What would the world without rape look like? Um, so let's see if okay, this is where she talks about the talisman I'm looking for. Here it is. In Christian traditions, we have another chapter to this story. In some versions, the child of the dragon, serpent, and the spousey that actually loved him, their child becomes the first of 7 who. And here is the thing: wherever there is rape, for example, when people say, let's say, prostitution or whore, they basically mean the infant child that was raped and survived. We have 9 millennia of the world having something like whore, prostitute in its linguistic egregore. No esoteric egregore is compatible with creation when this is the situation, which can be the reason why, let's say, esoteric traditions that were based on fertility or creation talismans and used Genesis fell completely fragmented sometimes. And without that grand missing, no talismanic work is perfect, not perfect, but no talismanic work is refined. No talismanic work of creation is actually creative, authentic, and original. Because to have something original, we need to abolish occultistic rape, and only then do we touch its origin, this including the origin of ourselves, questioning regarding our sexuality, our gender, our sexual preferences, the right one. If people are looking at, is it a real love or a fake love? Is it a real occultistic gnosis or a fake one? We have to take rape out of the equation by abolishing rape that was an occultistic practice. And this is why Alcyone runs into so much difficulties, that Sedna can begin to usher us to resolving, usher us to addressing, usher us to abolishing. Um, Even if we talk about, let's say, nature, um, one of the people that I was watching today, of course, it's Gemini related, so it's going to be a lot of intermittence, which is a part of the sign, and I just allow it to be. This is by uh, channel Hancock Hale, and this is a lady that lives in Norwegian, and she begins to develop her own farm. And even though it's less, how should I say that? She wasn't thinking market value in the terms that she uses people. She hires people to but mainly does it herself to create the hay for the rams, and produces things in a way that is costing her more, but is closer to nature and more ecosystemic. And one of the things that I was addressing, other than these rituals, is how it affects people, creating certain disabilities, mental and physical, that make people, although they need nature, feel like they would be a burden if they came, let's say, let's say if she had to hire a person that can't stand on their feet to help her with the hay that needs to be dug up, which is standing, and then sewn and woven, which is standing, and then hang on, which is again standing. And so there are many things that once the balance, once the natural balance is offset by these rituals, then the retrieval to nature is already challenged. It's the infants that would be going through infanticide, and then what heals them is nature. So there's something very, if you think about Chiron at this point, this is something that we definitely have to address with all of its complexities. And the fact that when these people are not healed, we are amassing them into an oil refinery, which further disconnects from nature. Um, and also to consider the places where nature was not just serenity, but you think about the North Sea or the foaming sea monster that only upon Enlightenment age began to be a romantic era where people would come close to that monster that could swallow people whole. It could immediately, I know in northern Norwegian they say not to come too close to the sea when people travel, because suddenly there can be tides and people can be literally swiped off or drowning thinking they're walking on the shore. Um, and so there are many things to know, and yet every terrain provides for what is needed to live, and yet to know, people do need to know the people of the terrain, and then there are the changes of the terrain itself, which is also with the changes of the culture and the people, or the compound effect of certain cultures, certain traditions. Um, so the technology in the land. Um, so in one's going back to the story, in some versions of the story, the child becomes the first of the seven who formed the Pleiadians, or the first of five, with the husband and the wife becoming the two of the seven stars. This mirrors another famous dragon-related little story, that is the seven little flags, a nickname for the Pleiadians. In this tale, a human hero becomes the adopted brother of five half-dragon brothers, Zmajevich, brought through their mother, an elderly dragon bride. Together they rescue a princess from a seven-headed dragon, tyrannical serpent seeking to marry her non-consensually. Just think about how the serpent is so sacred in Aboriginal tales, while the serpent is so punished in Western. Or the slain dragon in the hemisphere, in the Western hemisphere, I don't know, versus the idealized dragon, or um, and then they argue over who will marry her. Seeking advice, they consult the mothers. Again, the story of the mothers. Mother of the wind suggests they seek the mother of the moon. It's kind of like a bureaucratic. And then the mother of the moon recommends the mother of the sun. Finally, the sun's mother advises them to ask their own mother. The elderly dragon bride resolves the matter by adopting the princess, ensuring all seven become siblings. So we see that it is said that during Orthodox St. George, which is May 6th, and St. Vitus Day, the seven little flags, the Pleiadians, consisting of the five dragon brothers, the young man and the princess, are absent from the sky because they return to the mothers in their realms to thank them for their advice. And this is where I went to look at St. George. And St. George is the patron of England, and St. Vitus also has to do, one of them has to do with epilepsy. I think it's St. Vitus. But this is where I begin to look at the saints. So St. George, although St. George Day is April 23rd, and this is honoring of English identity and the slaying of the dragon. Common celebrations include pinning a red rose to clothing, attending church service, and enjoying English food. So, National Flag of England. It's not a public bank holiday in England. Also associated with the Scout Association, and is their patron saint. And we have Saint Vitus, who is a Christian martyr from Sicily, venerated as one of the 14 holy helpers, known as patronage of dancers, actors, and those with epilepsy. Legend says he was tortured in boiling oil for his faith during Diocletianic persecution, but survived, eventually dying as a youth. So you think about the eternal youth, the early death, the martyrization, the mythization of the tortured. Um, one of the things that came about with Uranus Neptune, salvation, Uranus resistance, and this is where the myth of salvation and resistance. We have to be cautious. Where rape is not liberation, ritual abuse is not salvation, and rape and ritual abuse as resistance is not is not salvation, nor is it resistance. Of course, it is also not liberating. Um, Jokes about perpetual war states for 70 years are suspended to further notice. Uh, Following my jokes about A-bomb and Norwegian. When I looked at denuclearification, one of the people that was considered Israeli spy was basically known to have sold nuclear secrets to the Soviets, and he said that he wanted to create denuclearification. Anyway, he had to hide in Norwegian. So, the Nazis also ran away to Norwegian. So this is Serbian tradition. Feast is known as Vidovan in Serbia, commemorating the 1389 Battle of Kosovo. Funnily enough, the friend that I mentioned was looking at Kosovo, and yeah, in another episode, my Bulgarian friend, who's now professor for anthropology, was looking at the NATO intervention, the process of citification, and basically how the village life became, how certain people left the village life for the city, and how it changed the social fabrics of people around the border with Bosnia and Herzegovina, to which Bulgaria gave. So some of them Bulgaria gave a passport, and then in I think 2014 when it joined the Euro, it stopped. So that was kind of a Bulgarian perspective on. The research name is Professor Violeta Perikliva. So I hadn't found anything that maintains the name in the research, which is already bad, because she has been working on this since her PhD, which was around 2007 when she ingressed to her PhD, following a conversation by me that I hope was not too destructive. And 1389 particularly, I remember when I looked at the Pluto-Neptune cycles, and I don't remember if it was the square or the watch my How Old Is Your Old Money series. So this is things beginning to connect. And I guess that Alcyone 0-degree Gemini has to do with Uranus in general is bringing the past and the future together into a weird component. Where we are meant to reconnect with the past, but also sort of weak from the chaff regarding the past, and be able to predict, or to better predict and better create the future, and future timelines, by sorting the wheat from the chaff when it comes to the past. So if I think about Uranus Sedna conjunction that is happening right now in the sky, thinking about, oh well, we do not know the world without rape and trafficking for at least 12 millennia. Sedna hasn't been here in 12 millennia. Knowing that, connecting with First Nations, we begin to see the signs of wedding at puberty, which was basically becoming a woman, in various tribes across, from Palestinian tribes to Inuit tribes to Bulgarian tribes. Then we understand that wedding at puberty is really that ancient if we sort the wheat from the chaff, and we understand that even in the myth of Alcyone, having the girls also being loved unconditionally and not raped, particularly upon puberty, but also before that, because extortion cults used the pre-puberty, which we also see in Talmud scriptures, um, actual evidence to the people swipe under the rug, but it's basically denoting that a child is okay to sleep with before a certain year or two because they're not they're an it. And that it is also used esoterically to create, um, we talk about Sefer Yetzirah and so on, to create a person esoterically in a Frankenstein tradition, where that is supposed to be a person that is both a slave, a profane, and a sacred, a prophet. And this pertains to the rabbinical, to the aristocracy, to the elite. So now, a lot of people say, "Oh, this is misunderstood," or "That is misunderstood." We'll have to abolish ritual abuse first, and the duality and duplicity and challenge when it comes to these things. Um, and a lot of people, surely you're wrong. You're this. Yeah, like the Masons that wouldn't ask what's happening in the 33 and 35, like the Mormons that just try to explain away the attempts to make people uh, polygamist by force. And polygamy is by force, inherently. Like the Scientologists that don't question what the esoteric tradition where people just have occultistic use of life energy, which is rape, whether they use aggression or they use aggression dissociation and creation of misplaced arousal and trauma bond. So there's a lot of things that need to be challenged from the core. Big shout out to Cult of Consciousness for doing that work. Also, when it comes to the esoterics and to what we consider tolerance, um, and going back to the Alcyone story of 0 degree Gemini, a lot of people reconnect with their tradition. So suddenly we see that, oh, that was the ceremony of becoming a woman. That can be very emotive for a willingly consensual couple that had a baby to reconnect also with their heritage and tradition. But we also need to understand what it brings about in the sense of sorting the wheat from the chaff. Do we actually, to maintain it that it will be used modernly so, we need to prevent from the things that got the tribal to go extinct from permeating. Um, and one of those things is indeed forcibly wedding at puberty. And Senna was the one that was literally sacrificed because she negated that tradition. She was the child that didn't want no hand if that hand was not honoring of her, and the shaman had to um, appease Senna with the touch of a love that is actually loving. So Sedna and Alcyone meeting is almost beyond naturally natural. It's supernaturally natural for these stories to meet. And Uranus brings in the past so that we can build the future, we can actually innovate. We need to look into the past and say, wait a second, building those traditions is amazing, but we don't want wedding at puberty coming back. And those that do, those that brought all these traditions to bring wedding at puberty, isn't that good for those Inuit women that married their loved one, happily married with a happy child and loving, enjoying the reconnection to their heritage? Hey, ain't that good for them to know that the colonialists want to bring back the pre-puberty sign, the upon puberty sign, in order to wed forcibly and rape the girls upon puberty, as a form of colonialism, by the way, and using the tradition to colonize the sacred. Palestine! um, and a lot of these men in those secret society are women born that were forcibly given hormones and many other way more atrocious things. Um, okay. When did we begin this recording? Oh, before Saturn hour. We began it at the moon hour, let it be noted. Now, this is also, I also want to talk about nature and how people look at the natural. Because if people, from trying to look at nature, and they look at the people that live in a remote place as a part of that nature, they see the people doing certain things, so they see, oh, this breed of people is basically doing that. And if that thing is good, they're like, oh, that's a lovely breed. And if that thing is bad, as per the but it's also not as per the perception, because if that thing is forcibly wedding in puberty, oh, this breed does that, and then it creates entire frequency of the ecosystem that causes famine. So we need to treat that breed as we would treat, let's say, the many flies that, how should I say that? Barge? No. No, I'm talking about the animal. Locusts. Swarm of locusts. So you see, you think about it. If you are let's say you're far away. Let's say you're an Inuit person that goes to the Ekveld of the world, to Palestine, and you see people there. You don't know if they are Jews or if they are Palestinians, and they all look the same, and and their costumes are pretty much similar. So you say, okay, these people, they rape children. What, at 10, 12 they marry child, and then it becomes famine. And then they wonder what is famine. And then they have wars, and they're like, this breed is like a swarm of locusts. And this is exactly what would happen. And then people reconnect with the costumes, and those costumes are the marks of being wed at puberty. Now, everything right with reviving tradition, everything absolutely right with sorting the wheat from the chaff when we talk about the tradition. If I would to revive the tradition of my grandfather's lineage whose family died in the Holocaust, raping children, wedding them at puberty, celebrating marriage by the red stains of the somebody that they didn't know how to make love to because it was a child, an adult raping a child as wedding, probably not one of the things that I want back. Probably some of the reasons that the family and the lineage got almost extinct in a Holocaust. So the Sedna Uranus is reminding us, yes, to revive tradition, but abolish the ritual abuse, trafficking, forced child marriage facets of it. If we want food, if we want legacy. And now, um, we are reminded that the mother of Alcyone wanted a child so the mother of the dragon or the serpent child Alcyone wanted a child so much, even if it is a serpent. So there's something here that definitely is calling to. Think about people that long to reconnect with their tradition so much, even if it means putting the reason that they got extinct almost mark on their chin. And it can also mean that that mark on the chin can have a different context, but that for that to have a different context, we have to argue with the scriptures. And this is where, remember when I talked about Huguenot women not arguing with the scriptures, because they lived their lives, and the scriptures were the scriptures, and then there was a massacre of the Huguenots, which was the result of which was Volk, which was the Dutch colonialism. And um, this and the inspiration to the United States. Those were the Protestants. There were Protestants in the sea of. Oh, okay. Can we jab Catholicism? Protestants in the sea of Catholicism literally went to the North Sea for calmer waters. And the reason being is that they didn't argue with the scriptures. If they reformed the Bible but didn't argue with the scriptures, what would happen? It was like being competitive to Catholicism. It's not the only thing that survives such degree of patriarchy is like either a matriarchal society or completely equal society in the scripture. And Jews are dealing with that today. Christians are dealing with that today. In fact, Catholicism, the Catholics are the main ones that I see moving towards reintegrating Mary Magdalene and Sophia. And there are a lot of discourses about that, but Catholics know that they will need to reintegrate the feminine to have one world religion. And those that still think to have kind of like a purity this or a purity that, it works fantastic with genocide, democide, colonialism, erasing languages, erasing people, fantastic. Like, and it would be exactly those who want to benefit from the occult rape of the girls that are purified. Uranus Sedna Alcyone are really the upheaval around that. And there is still the sextile to Neptune. Saturn and Neptune will go retrograde and meet on degree 1, which would be still within the sextile to Uranus. And this is where um, we really, the discerning of whether something is rebellious and liberating or is another ritual abuse under salvation, or whether something is reconnecting with tribal or is another form of child trafficking. guised as basically reconnecting with one's origins. Um, as Mars is now applying to square Jupiter, the topic of religious war, that is the belief of the tribe versus the rights of the individual. That is also the belief in care and importance of the mother versus the individual self-serving instinct. So it's both the good and the bad regarding the individual. It's the sovereignty and with Saturn responsibility of the sovereign, but with Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer because we understand that choice is a product of care and nourishment. And um, and with the lack of care and nourishment, total human extinction is euthanasia. Um, 29 degrees midheaven into Sag. Uranus Sedna Alcyone. The very Gemini sort of Gemini. Um, and the point of grace here is that this really is a 0 point where we really don't know fully yet the answers. We will have conflicting opinions. Now, in traditions where the now here are clues, because we have clues by what is coming forward and what is preceding. We're coming from Beta Persei, so we know that anything that rapes brings dead bodies upon dead bodies. We know that we've been there. We've been there. We saw what happened with people ritually abusing rape. We saw that when something doesn't honor the feminine, it's dead bodies upon dead bodies. Now, how to honor the feminine? But also, and we have the what's forward. What's forward is Aldebaran. And Aldebaran is a victory can be a Pyrrhus win, or a victory can be a victory that is actually fulfilling, that we're actually happy with. What is the telltale? Well, Alcyone is kind of not really knowing how to give us the answer right away, but we can look at the planet back, which is Beta Persei, and we're like, well, if rape brings dead bodies upon dead bodies, then any wind that is driven by dead bodies upon dead bodies is a Procyon wind. Then, but for that not to be a Procyon wind, that we have to have rape not present in the strategy and the outcome. Israel had rape at its foundations, whether it's by sexpionages, even if we believe pristine reality where there was no anything harm to the people of the region. Within Israel, there was rape. There was rape to use people as espionage. There was trafficking of women. There was trafficking of children, and so on and so forth. Israel is a perpetual war state for 70 something years, almost 80 years. And most Israelis that had a passport or had a way even without a passport when to live someplace. Able-bodied Israelis usually don't live in Israel. Which means that the people that were trafficked and tortured in Israel to begin with were the helpless. Chiron is 2 meters from egressing to Taurus, which would be the eighth house of this country. Now, this is just one example. It's not the only country where this problem is prevalent. Now, the first thing that people that do aliyah to Israel, which basically immigrate to Israel, back from the diaspora, are hearing is, "You're crazy. What are you doing here? It's impossible to live here." Whether it's the prices of living, or people simply looking at them as crazy. Um, Now, by the way, when as person of dual nationality, when I was um, in Netherlands, I heard the same things by people that immigrated to Netherlands. They tell me the person that cleans the bathroom found me in the toilet because I didn't find the shelter, so that was where I was trying to sleep. And then he was, we had a conversation. Tells me like, here, one has to take care of their own. And indeed, one of the charts have Chiron in Aries. And it was a Chiron in Aries return for the Netherlands. Um, and so then there is a person that immigrated to Netherlands and tells me, a Dutch person that is supposedly came back home, here is difficult. One has to work on their own. And indeed, when we hear the stories, um, we see people that had to battle not just the ocean but the North Sea, were very innovative, but and then a lot of people come to their rights, but they don't know the terrain, they don't know the land, they don't know what it entails, um, and not all of them are able-bodied, which is also the story for the foundation of Israel. I talked about the psychiatrists that were working as bus drivers and then basically cooperated with the British mandate to cast away the people that came by boats from what would later be Nazi Germany and Europe in the 30s during Nuremberg laws, which these psychiatrists immigrated to Israel because it was getting over-specified field and their specification was no longer needed there, and they tried to find the work in Israel or in the British mandate settlements, which was being a bus driver or whatever they could, and that was their way to do something close to their profession. Um, and then, of course, there was segregation between the origins and bloodlines um, regarding really in cooperation with the British mandate. There was a colony for everything that's true to a colony. It was a complete colony. And then with every colony, there are people that are compliant with the colonizers and people less compliant with the colonizers. Um, so because they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to contain, that they didn't want this place to be a place where all the sick people come to, or a hospice type of um, and so, which by the way would give all these doctors that immigrated because of specificity the actual job other than a bus driver, but they didn't To begin with, they didn't see how they can uh, basically accommodate for the people who are not able-bodied or able to work and so on and so forth. Now, um, those stories of origin matter. Um, Uranus here is really taking various perspectives regarding being unconditionally loved regardless of one's form. Now, as Mercury moves, right now Mercury is still in Aries, and Mercury can be one's bloodline, one's origin, um, one's sense of self or identity, but also one being able to work, one being able-bodied, and with Chiron, they aren't. And in those cultures that would traffic those people, and this is where Sedna comes in, will suffer famine, genocide, democide, Holocaust, whatnot. I mean, the Holocaust that they would put a person who, to begin with, is not able to work and not able-bodied because they were sexually violated in rape as accommodation or rape as inclusivity in society, to begin with, it's a Holocaust. So what would happen to the people that's the inclusivity that they offer? And Sedna's story is with Sedna. Sedna is venerated because she reminds the people, particularly women, to stand their ground and being well treated. Rape is not well treated. Rape is not work. Rape is not accommodation. Rape is not food. And the cultures that don't get that will not have food, accommodation, or even legacy and continuation of their bloodlines. I mean, why would they? I'm speaking as the accidental survivor to such lineage. The nature is that these tribes will go extinct, that these lineages will go extinct. Because rape is not natural. In fact, when people want to forcibly convert people to a religion, they use rape of infants to show them that their gods will not help them, and then they are forced to pray to the gods that supposedly will help them if they rape others. And this is where Sedna meets Alcyone. In Gemini, and um, and this is where we could say Sedna takes the form of Alcyone, or Sedna's motivation connect with Alcyone, and this is where there is a very natural connection there. Because Sedna shape shifted into the sea goddess, or alternatively the sea monster, that would take everything in it to decompose until there is no food and there are no people and nothing survives, because that is exactly the state of a person who is raped. And if people expect people to be raped as marriage, or raped for housing, or raped for work, or even raped as children, then what do they expect to come out of it? That's the ecosystem that we also see today. And now here's the challenge. The nature, or returning to nature, makes the people who are not able-bodied feel incompatible with the tribe because they can't contribute as much, and they were seen as burden. And yet it's nature that heals them, and if we don't accommodate for them, then this is where basically the stories of Sedna unfold, which means famine, which means, you know, loss of the ecosystem, loss of nature itself, which also in a way shows us that we are important in nature, we are a part of nature. We're not separate from nature in the sense that we think, and we're not unified with nature in the sense that we would expect. We cannot rape to exist, because this would make us go extinct. And nobody effing cares about the lineage or a heritage or a linguistic tradition or a culture or whatnot if there was rape. The fact that the raped person is the extinction is of the everythingness within the raped person. And so they can't care about all these things that they don't get to live. I remember when there was the Israel-Palestine war, and I was digging half moons. And the funny thing, there was an Independence Day where the children were eating watermelon because it's summer, and then we tried to plant the seeds, literally, and I'm like, the children celebrating Israeli Independence Day eating watermelon, and there's something so innocent about it because these are children. There's like, that's what was it was it was watermelon. That was to eat, and so and planting the seeds in the ground with the half moons, and this is where one very weird Independence Day, but I was also thinking about how there's so many people in Israel that never really had land. So the connection to the land was not understood. People didn't know what it's like to have a fest of harvesting the olives from the olive oils. And so they couldn't, if they didn't have land, they cannot relate to that connection. And so violating that connection becomes something that they don't fret about too much. Much in the sense that a raped person doesn't fret about extinguishing the world too much. Nobody fretted when they were raped. To understand the connection with the land, people need to have land, but if people rape, their connection to the land dissolves, and this is what happens to the people that perpetuate Sedna stories. If people occultistically rape someone, then they try to take their roots, they try to take the connection to their roots. And they also do rituals to do with burial. And so there's our souls that don't want to go underground.